Welcome to another episode of the Peak Potential Success Show. My name is Fong. I'm an entrepreneur, business strategist, real estate investor, speaker, and also best-selling author. And every single day, I help others unlock potentials and guide them to succeed. Today on the show, we have another fascinating guest. On this show, we interview celebrities, entrepreneurs, business CEOs, athletes, and artists to find out their path to success, how they're able to overcome challenges, adversity, and of course, the keys to success. And today's guest is somebody I've had the privilege of meeting a few weeks ago at this conference. And when I saw her speak, it was absolutely amazing. She was one of the top speakers there, and I couldn't wait to connect with her. Hence, I'm very, very excited to have her here today. And it's no surprise that she's an amazing speaker because she's a communication coach. She's been able to help a lot of her clients really engage and connect with their audiences, achieve their goals, and of course, enjoying that process and that journey because sometimes that journey is so hard to get through, and if you can enjoy it, it's even better. She's empowering a lot of others to really unlock their potential through confident and engaging communication. And what's also unique about her is she's able to pull insights, experiences from different industries, different backgrounds with her engineering, sales, and real estate interpreter background, pulling that analytical and also that practical knowledge together and adding that to give lots of value to her clients is very, very important. As I said, she's an interpreter. She's fluent in English, French, and also Japanese. And something she's also very good at is conveying emotions across languages, which is sometimes very, very difficult when it comes to different cultures. So please welcome interpreter and also communication coach, Ms. Saki Kajita.
Thank you so much, Fong, for that amazing introduction and really privileged, really honored to be on your podcast today. When you came up to me at that event and asked me if I wanted to be part of your podcast, I was very honored, was really the word that I can come up with because it's something that I never thought of being in someone else's podcast. Actually, this is my first time showing up in a podcast of someone else. And yeah, so thank you so much for the invitation. Looking forward to this awesome hour or so that we're gonna have together.
Well, thank you very much for all that. And I can almost guarantee that this is going to be first of a lot for you because what you do is very, very skilled and also very, very valuable for people to learn. Communication is something that's very, very important and something I think that should be like focused on in all education. And for
Mhm.
some reason, it's not. It's one of those classes that you have to go and take like leadership class, and then they go, okay, do a speech. But
Yeah.
otherwise, it's not really looked upon as that important. And as people grow up and they get into their jobs and their corporate lives and all that kind of stuff, they start realizing, wait a minute, if I can communicate better, I'm going to be able to really move up on the ladder and be able to lead teams and whatnot. But for you, how did you get to where you are today? Like, how did you become this communication coach? Is it something that you've always kind of aspired to do? Was it a skill set that you go, hey, this is easy? I mean, I've been doing this since I was two.
I wish. I mean, you're absolutely right when it comes to learning about, communication and especially public speaking in at school. It's something that we definitely don't learn. It's something that is, although expected when we're doing presentation in front of the class, but we never are taught to how to speak or how to communicate, how to answer questions in a structured way. And I think those are extremely valuable, especially in the business scene when you want to be seen as confident and you want to be seen as someone who can communicate their thought properly. And it's funny that you asked me where if I, I wish I woke up like at 2 years old thinking like, oh, I want to be a communications coach, but not at all. I'm an immigrant from Japan, which is very rare, and we immigrated here in Montreal, my family and I, when I was 6 years old. And back then I only spoke Japanese with a few words in English, and the only words I knew were like, hey, this is a pen. But in what situation would you use that phrase, Like no one will point at the pen and be like, hey, what is this? And I'll be like, this is a pen. So a lot of the things that I learned in Japan as English words weren't really useful, and I learned that quickly. And I thought my main focus was on learning the language, especially here in Montreal. We don't only have English, we also have French. So those two languages made it so that I really had a hard time communicating with other people from my school, other students. And I don't want to say I got bullied. I think I was just made fun of because I couldn't communicate. And I thought words were everything. that if I only knew the vocabulary that I can communicate with other people. And I throughout my years, I learned English, I learned French, and I'm very fortunate to have three language in my pocket so that I can communicate with people around me all the time in different languages. And I also can use that as a tool to help other people who have that language barrier. How I became a communication coach was because myself, I went to Toastmasters. I think a lot of people have heard about it. It's a international organization where we practice our public speaking and leadership. And there I started in 2019 and I really enjoyed the whole process. Even before that, I was teaching engineering things to the corporate companies and stuff like that. But I didn't really have that skill. I didn't really learn about it and I just winged it. And once I started learning it and I started realizing that, hey, this is not just a tool, but it's sort of an art that we can use. And we can actually use our creative side as much as our analytical side to see what works the best, but also to see, what are some of the things that we can do to attract people's attention, or what can we do so that we understand other people better? How can we convey our emotion? Those are the things that I learned, and I really wanted to give that to other people, the tools that I have learned to other people so that they can enjoy while they're learning. And for me, it's joy is number one value. I think in life, it's too short to be feeling like you don't want to do something or you're too afraid. I think everything should be taken with a cup of joy.
Mhm. Wow, that's absolutely fascinating. For you to move to Montreal, not only is English something you had to learn, but French is something else you had to learn, because everybody else is speaking French. How did you navigate through that? Because learning brand new languages that are completely different from
Mhm.
your original language is so difficult. How did you navigate through that?
So when I came here, I was 6 years old and I was still young. So my first language that I learned coming here was English. I was put into an English school. And I think it gets, it's very natural because you're in an environment full of English speaking people. And that's the only language that, they're speaking. So you kind of get used to in that sense. And I was also very fortunate. I don't know if my parents did it on purpose, but they brought me to this after, I would say, in my third year. They brought me to see some of the open house of high school, and I was still young, but we were looking out. And then they brought me to these French schools, French private schools, and they were all so nice. They had like their skating rink, their swimming pool, they had a musical band. And then I would go there and be like, oh my God, I want to go to this school. I want to go to this school. And then my mom would tell me, Saki, here in Quebec, the province of Quebec, if you go to French school and if you go to French private school, it's much cheaper than English private school. And we'll be able to put you into a French private school if ever you learn French. And I was like, I'm sold. How do I sign up? So then my parents signed me up to transfer me to a French, they call it the welcoming class,
Uh,
where you get to be with the non-French speaking students and you try to catch up. So I went to a welcoming class in my third year of elementary school. And then fourth year, I was able to transfer to a regular French class with other, normal students there. So the transfer for me learning English and French wasn't very difficult. It's something that just went with the environment. And I think that's when we know that the power of environment, who you surround with, they say who you become is the top 5 people that you surround yourself with. And it was really that taught me that, if I put myself in that environment, if I immerse myself in that environment, I have no choice. Now, I think the most difficult part for me was keeping my Japanese, because I was in an environment where we rarely speak Japanese. my parents did put me into a Japanese school every Saturday, and that really helped me keep my Japanese. And also, my parents only spoke to me in Japanese all the time.
Mhm.
So that's where I was able to keep that and still use that until today. And I'm able to read, write, and speak in Japanese, which is I find fascinating and amazing.
I'm so jealous because I I'm not fluent in reading Chinese or writing Chinese. I can sing karaoke. I can read some of those words,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
that's
that's
all pure
important.
memory, right? That's all pure memory. I can play mahjong too, but anyway.
Yeah, that's also important too.
Yep, very, very important. W when it comes to learning different languages, for
Mhm.
you working with other people, what would you recommend them do? Like, most likely they're already adults, and when
Yeah.
you're adult, it's a little bit more difficult to immerse yourself into the environment. Whereas when you're a child, you're kind of stuck in that environment, and everybody is already speaking it. As an adult, what's the best way for people to learn a new language?
I think the the reason why when we become older, we have this tendency to not be able to pick up that language easily is because we have this sense of, I don't want to embarrass myself. And what that's the thing that the kids don't have because for them, embarrassment is not embarrassment. They don't care if they make mistakes. They just wants to have fun. They just wants to be there at the moment. They want to try something new. So they would use those words, even if it's not in a right way, even if the pronunciation is wrong, they would just keep using it until it becomes their second nature. And I think we need to bring that back. And the best way, I think, is to make a game where instead of saying how many times did I get right, say you count the times that you got wrong and you say, today I'm going to make 100 mistakes in speaking this language. So then you go out there and you would speak with the native speaker, you would try to use the words and they will correct you. And each time you keep count of how many times you got that mistake, but it's through those mistakes that you get better. And it's kind of the same with some of the salespeople. They would say they would play this game called getting 10 no's at a time in a row. And the game is you do either a cold call, door knocking, whatever it is that you do, you try to get 10 no's in a row. And if you do 5 calls and you get 1 no after the sixth, then you start over. And that's really to reframe your mind in thinking that getting no is not a bad thing. And it's the same making a mistake is not a bad thing. It's really the pathway to getting to where you want to go.
So very true. And when you make it fun, especially if you have somebody else who wants to learn the language with you, then you
Yeah.
can have a competition going, which is very, very important. Now, for you, once you got to the point where you are fluent and you're able to speak all those languages, what was that point where you go, you know what, I need to go on stages or I need to go and do presentations? What made you think about doing that? And then also, what were some of the biggest hurdles that you had to go through in order for you to be confident doing that?
Hmm. I think the where I felt the need to go on the stage and start speaking is when I had a message that I wanted to tell people. And I think that's what brings people to the point where they want to become a better communicator is either because they have an idea or they have their experience that they want to share that could be of value. And it's all about giving back to the people. And I've seen so many great communicators, what they do amazing, what they all have in common is that those amazing communicators all have this precious gift, whether from their experience, a message, a purpose in life, whatever it is that they really want to share to other people. And when we have that calling of, I really want to share this, whatever I learned, it could be about mathematics, it could be about something that you learned from a stranger on the street, whatever it is that you want to share to others, then I took that as an opportunity for me to step on the stage and share that with other people. And what's so great about it is that as much as I'm giving a gift to other people by sharing my experience or sharing what I felt, and maybe it's going to make them think in a different way, or it might trigger them to do something their routine in a different way, make their life better, but it also keeps me accountable. And I think that's what's in it for me personally is not the fame. It's not really about, showing up on the stage and performing and making people laugh, but it's really about if I say something, then I have to do it because I don't want to be a hypocrite. So right there, it keeps me accountable for my words and to keep my words.
Yeah, that's how this podcast kind of started too. I go, I'm going to start a podcast. Go out there, put it onto social media. I'm starting a podcast. It's going to come once a week, and sure enough, I'm still holding up to that promise.
Which is
So it's
amazing.
it's very important to put it out there, right?
Oh yeah.
For you, when it comes to, I like how you talked about mathematics was one of the things that you brought up, and also engineering that you had to do presentations on. And how do you make those topics interesting and exciting? Because I've been to my share of engineering talks and town halls and all that kind of stuff, and sometimes they're very, very dry. So
Mhm.
how would you coach people in giving that type of lecture or that type of presentation where it's so left-minded to be
Yeah.
so entertaining and fun?
Yeah. The left-minded people are, I wouldn't say they're a difficult crowd. They're just a particular crowd that we need to make sure that number one key is really know the audience. Let's say if I'm giving a not a speech or maybe like because I would go to companies and I would explain them the product and how to use them. So it was more of like a tutorial or workshop. And whenever I would go there, I would make sure that I knew who were my audience. I knew the company very well that I was going to. So whoever you're giving, whether they're students, whether they're company employees, whoever they are, it's really important that you know the audience. And then from there, what you can always use are the the common things that they know and incorporate humors into your speech or in your presentation so that it doesn't feel boring. And I use that all the time is I when I know who are my audience, I would do some research and I would know who the CEO is, and I would make sure that I would put in some, jokes from here and there about the CEO or about their manager, or if it's, in a university, I would bring back the days that I used to be there or some profs that they all know. That way you can build that connection. And I think that's what's most important is that when we listen to a presentation and we feel boring is because there's no connection with the speaker. But when we have that connection with the speaker, then that's when people are willing to put their phone away and listen to you and pay attention.
Very, very important stuff. Connecting with the audience is one of those things that a lot of people forget about, especially when they're so immersed in their own mind about presenting. All they're thinking about, okay, get the content out there, get the content
Yeah,
memorized, get everything perfect, and then they go out there, do it, and they leave. And
yeah,
the problem with that is there's no connecting with the audience. Um,
100%.
there's a lot of problems with regards to people getting on stages and fighting that fear and being confident enough to get up and doing their presentation and speaking on. Like, there's a lot of stuff that limits them from actually taking action doing presentations. What's your process from getting on stage, getting ready to do a presentation to coming up with content? What's your progress?
When you say my progress, when does it start? When I get the
So how
opportunity?
so for instance, like you have this presentation that's coming.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you do? How do you prep for it? How do you get ready? How do you practice for it? And then when you are at the event, how do you get yourself ready to be
Mhm.
stepping in front of people?
Number one, when I get any opportunity to speak, my first question is, who am I speaking to? Again, it's all about the audience. And once I know the audience, the second question is, what can I give for my audience that could be of a value? Because if I'm speaking to an engineer and I'm talking about something that is so unrelated, like, the best way to become a stand-up comedian, it might not be relevant. But if I talk to them about, like the importance of communication, even in the engineering field, then that might be something that might interest them. Always come up, it's always about them and what the audience wants and what could be of a value. And then from there, I pull up everything that I know. Sometimes I do some research. I get stories from my personal life, or it could be from my friend's life, whatever it is, because story is another key component that is extremely useful. Stories, metaphor, examples. I craft my speech. I work on it. Obviously, I prepare a lot, but I usually don't. unless it's a contest speech for my Toastmasters contest, then I really need to nail every single word because it's only a 5 to 7 minute speech. If I do have time, I usually have bullet points, so it's more in the flow rather than being word by word, and that makes me less stressed and less inside my head. But in either case, I practice it so much that it becomes natural. And this is super important because when I go on stage or when I go in front of people, the first thing I want to focus on is on them.
Mm.
And that's what allows me to be outside of my head. And I think when we're nervous and when we're stressed and like that's because we're inside our head and we're worried more about how we would look rather than what they will get out of it. And when we put the focus on them, then that stress goes away, that nervousness kind of I wouldn't say it will disappear. It turns into more excitement. It's like when you go up to a friend and you discover this amazing restaurant and you're like, oh my God, Fong, you really need to try this restaurant. Oh, they had the best, best dumpling ever. It's so juicy inside. You know, you have that passion. You're able to do that to that one friend that you have. Then if the topic is passionating enough for you, then you should be able to do that to 10 people, 20, 30, 50, 100. That's how I see it.
Now I'm hungry. I need to find this dumpling. When it comes to fear, that's a lot of things that people are thinking about when it comes to speaking in front of people. You mentioned about the fact that focus on other people, focus on the audience. That's easier said than done.
Mhm.
So how does one overcome that fear first? How do they get themselves up in front of people?
I think before going up in front of people in plural, I think the best way is to start with one.
Mm.
And we go, you know, no one's gonna ask you to bench press 100 pounds if you can't even, you know, like do a bench press with 20 pounds. So why do we do that? Why do we say, you know, why do we go from like 0 to 100? When we can go from 0 to 1. And that's if you can communicate to one person, you can communicate to 100 people. That's how I see it. The best way that I usually make people do this exercise is to find someone, sit down and stare in their eyes for 3 minutes. And it's the most awkward thing ever.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
When you're picking that one person to practice, like the staring at them and also doing your presentation and whatnot, do you recommend like family friends or somebody that you're not that close to, but just somebody that could give you some feedback?
Anyone. And I think this exercise is not necessarily about getting feedback at first, just to stare in the eyes. It's really just about connecting with people and to understand that the person that you're connecting to is another human being
Mhm.
and they're not perfect.
Yeah.
They have their imperfection. They have their flaws, they have their strength, they have their weakness, and that's beautiful. And when we understand that, that's when we can step into the next part, which is to deliver a speech or to just talk about a story to one person
Mhm.
and to really look into their eyes, because that's one thing that I find a lot of speakers they're afraid of when they, you know, when they go on the stage. It's like, oh, I don't want to, like, should I look at the look at the back of the how do you call it, the audience, so it looks like I'm talking to everyone. But if you're talking to everyone, then you're not talking to anyone.
Exactly.
When you're connecting with one person, it's interesting because even when you're on the stage and you're looking into the eyes of one person, all the people around, maybe 10, 20 people around them will feel extremely connected to you. And even the people on the other side of the audience will also feel connected because they feel the connection that you're having with the other person. So one major trick that I can give to people when they want to connect with people on stage is I had this from a workshop that I went to. It's called the Mastery of Self-Expression, and the trainer there, Larry Gilman, he would say, make sure that you see your words land in the other person.
Mhm.
And I thought that was powerful because now every time, whatever I say, sometimes I'm not even sure what I'm saying, but I can see that in their eyes and I'm connecting with them and I'm making sure that every word that I say is landing in them.
Mm.
And when we do that, we're no longer in our heads, we're somewhere else. We're like in this trance state where once we finish the speech, we're like, I don't know what happened, but that was amazing.
That is a wonderful feeling when you're done and it's like, oh, it's all over. What happened? It's a great feeling.
Yeah.
You mentioned practicing until it becomes very, very natural. Are there some tips or tricks that you'd use for practicing? So, for instance, myself, I can't stand practicing in front of a mirror. I just
Hmm.
start to notice certain things that I really don't like, and I start to be more critical than anything if I'm looking at myself at the mirror. So, what I like doing is I like standing up, doing my presentation, walking around, and then making eye contact with all the posters and all the photos that I have around in my room. I lent that advice to one of my clients, and he did something that was kind of weird. He goes, "Oh, great idea!" So he goes and practices, and in his room, he cut out eyeballs
Oh
from the
my God.
magazine, and he just puts eyeballs all over. He's like, "Yeah, I make sure I made contact with every eyeball." I'm like, "To each their own, as long as it works for you." So,
Yeah.
what's something that you do that's unique to you that not many people would actually implement or have implemented?
Well, first of all, I would be as scared as you if I were to practice in front of the mirror. I will be way too self-conscious. I'll be like, oh, my hair is like not proper. Oh no, my facial expression is weird. Like, why am I smiling this way? And at the end of the day, it's crazy because when we're presenting, that's not what we're going to see. We're going to see people. So I think the way that you're practicing with the posters is amazing. If I were to use any posters, I would make sure that those posters, people are smiling in that poster because
Mm.
that would make us feel better. If we're saying a joke, then at least we know that people are laughing. In the worst case, even if they don't laugh, at least we can see their smile. That's one great way. I don't have any posters in my house, so I usually deliver it to my dog, who is usually sleeping. So um, I what I do a lot, and there's two parts in my practice. One part is about practicing my vocals and to know where I would use a very strong tonality to make sure that I have that impact on the words that I'm saying. But there's also the other part, which is more about conveying the emotion and how do I transfer my emotion. And for that, I use a lot of visualization. I
Mm.
visualized that I was speaking in front of 10 people, in front of 100, in front of 1,000. And I do that before I go to bed. I close my eyes and I just deliver my speech. And sometimes I go, wow, that felt amazing. And it goes the way that you visualize. So I think visualization is one of the most powerful tool that you can use other than um, practicing standing up and actually saying, because it's not always about the words.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I also structure my speech whenever I have a actual structured speech and not necessarily long presentation. Those speeches, I put it into different parts, different so that I can just pick up that part and practice that part. And that you can do it in your car. Just be like, okay, I'm just gonna practice this part about talking about my grandma. I would just practice that.
Yeah.
Or, and that's really good because when you lose track of, oh, what's next? If I can remember, oh, next is about grandma. Okay, then I already know my part.
Mhm.
So having that structure really helps.
Yeah, so important. I think a lot of people miss that aspect of it. They believe, okay, I need to practice from beginning to end, beginning to end, beginning to end. And when they're up there and they miss that one thing here, the whole thing falls apart, and they're not able to pull it back up together because they didn't practice it that way. So that's very, very important
Yeah.
and very, very good for people to know. Something we mentioned before is the fact that you are able to convey emotions across different languages. And that's something lots of people don't either realize or they forget that different cultures have different meanings, different tonalities and whatnot. Do you have any examples or certain stories that you could share where that came across very, very important?
Yeah, as a interpreter, I I deal with many different situations. Sometimes it's a lot more fun. You know, I go to school and it's meeting between teacher and parents. The parents are Japanese, the teachers only speak French. Or I go to the some cases it's really hard. The doctor will only speak in French, the person is in Japanese, and they're announcing that she has cancer. In some part it's more joyful, where it's the lady is in, she speaks in English, the nurse in French, and the lady is pregnant and she's having her baby soon, so we're teaching about how to feed your baby and what to expect in terms of contractions and all that. Depending on the situation, it's very different. But one thing that it was one of my first job that I did that really struck me, and that really gave me this relief. I really felt the importance of this job, and the emotion is this lady, she was having a trouble with the youth protection department, and they took her son away to a shelter with another home, foster home, and she really wanted her son back. And I noticed that by listening to her stories, that a lot of the things that she wanted to say was misinterpreted by the interpreter that was working previous before me. And the case got worse and worse and worse, to the point where even the child, the son, he wanted to go back with his mom, and he was saying, no, none of this happened. She's not abusive at all. Like, it was a misunderstanding, but they didn't believe him. They thought he was just scared of her, and they just brought them away from her. And when I came in and I was talking to the social worker, I was between social worker who spoke English and she was speaking in Japanese, and she was, explaining how much she wanted her son back. And I really told her with all my passion, as if the son was mine, to the social worker, saying how much I miss him and how much I wanted to be there for him. And right now, it was unbearable, the pain that she was living. And when we started doing that, within, I would say, 2, 3 meetings, the social worker started saying, wow, the mother is being so much more cooperative, and we see that she really wants her son back, so we're going to bring him back. And they were able to live together, and now they moved back to Japan and they're living together in Japan. But when I see that impact that we can have on people, and the importance of really making sure that the other part understand not just the words that they're saying, but really like what they're feeling, I think that's extremely important, and that has a huge impact.
Wow, that's a very, very powerful story, and very, very important when it comes to being able to interpret properly to people, because it's not just the words, right? So, um, I know that as a speaker, we've all gone through certain mishaps. We've all gone through things that we wish didn't happen, but we learned a lot from it. I would
Mhm.
love to hear what you've gone through that you go, wow, that was the worst thing in the world that's happened to me on stage or as a speaker, but this is what I learned from it. For myself, I remember completely blanking out in front of a whole group, and it wasn't speaking; it was actually singing. I was
Oh,
I was
okay.
re I was memorizing my lyrics over and over and over again, up to the point where they were about to announce me on stage.
Yeah.
And the last time I recited it, I missed this one part. And sure enough, it was that same part that I screwed up on as I was singing that song. And it was complete silence. And I'm like, ah. So my lessons learned was never practice all the way up until the very last moment, because
Yeah.
that will probably screw you up. So anything that you could share with regards to what you learned from a failure or a very challenging moment?
Yes, a lot. Well, one of the main thing, and I have this tendency to, I always feel like I can do more, that there's always a better speech. And every year I participate in the Toastmasters speech contest as a way for me to challenge myself and to see if there's a better speech that I can come up with. The bad thing is that in order for me to go higher up in the contest, there's certain levels. There's the club level, and then there's the area, division, district, and so on and so forth until the international level. Every time I win one level and go up the next. In my head, I'm like, okay, well, I won with this speech, but I wonder if I can come up with a better speech. And within those a month or maybe sometimes 3 weeks, 4 weeks, I would try to come up with another speech. But then I won't have time to work on it, practice it as I usually do. And it becomes like this last minute thing. So I remember two, maybe, I think it was last year or a year ago, I I went all the way, I finished the area, and for my division, instead of keeping the same speech and working and improving on it, I decided to make another speech. And that's when I didn't have a coach. And that's another thing, like always have a coach if you want to get to the higher level, because it just so it's very comforting to know that what you're on the right path or you're completely off, and not having a coach and just trying to wing everything by myself. I remember doing the speech, and then the next person, the person after me, I saw his speech and I was like, his speech is not that good, but he's so prepared. He's well prepared. Everything is just like on the spot. And I knew he was going to win. And yes, indeed, he won. That was a very shocking moment for me to say, you know, you can't, there's always a place for improvement. And we can't always be chasing for something better. If we are, then make sure that you actually put time into it so that you can perfect it and you can make it something that is worth presenting to other people.
I so feel what you went through. And it's one of those things where you kind of go, okay, no, I could do a better speech, or oh, I'm so bored of doing the same speech over and over and over again, because by the time you get to that level, you've already done it like numerous times, right? So you
Yeah.
start losing that energy. In my scenario, it was a singing contest, and
Yeah.
I was joining it. I was in the contest with two other guys, so we were a group competing. And one of the members got so bored with that song that they decided to change the song for the next round. And sure enough, we didn't make it through. And I always say, if we only kept the same song, we might be able to make
Yeah.
it. Something else that just kind of came up to me was the fact that we're now doing everything on virtual, and communicating on virtual is completely different than face to face.
Yeah.
Toastmasters is one of those environments where a lot of meetings gone virtually, and for me, communicating virtually is not even close to live presentations.
Mhm.
However, this is what we are faced with. So, what are some things or some tips that you can give to people when it comes to presenting on screen versus presenting live?
One thing is, depending on how the presentation is, let's say you're presenting with slides. One thing that I do recommend is that you don't just share your screen where we only see your face at the in the corner, like right here, like very small, like your face is like this big, but rather find a way so that your face can actually be somewhere in the slide. Usually you can have this whole space, written something or with image, but then have this big space where you can be cropped out and actually have your face there. There are a lot of software that you can use to do that. And I highly recommend that, because a lot of the times what people look at is they want to see your facial expression at the same time as they're listening to you. And it's so easy to just lose it when we don't see your face. So that's one thing if you're presenting with slides and everything. As much as possible, I try not to use slides unless I find it necessary. Then I would like share some topic that they can take notes, and then I would take it off so
Mm,
that they would pay more attention, and they would feel like, okay, if I miss out on this, like I won't be able to take notes. So I'm going to take notes now and I'll listen. Another things that Another techniques that I like to use is to have them close their eyes and visualize something, because that could be done not even virtually, right? You can close your eyes and visualize. And by doing that, they have this moment where they're not staring at a screen all the time. And they get that moment where they can just relax their eyes and focus on something that is important. Another trick that I use is really to look at the camera as if I'm looking at you instead of looking at the screen. We tend to look at the screen, but when we look at the screen, it looks like you're not fully looking at the person. But if you're looking at the camera, it's as if we're having eye contact, even though you're on the other side and I don't really see you.
right.
So those are small tricks that we can use, but I definitely agree. I much prefer in person
Mm.
than in virtual.
Awesome. I got one final formal question for you, and that is, you're back on the world stage, and everybody's on their bated breath, waiting for your final message. What's that one message that you want everybody to remember Saki for?
The one message that I want everyone to remember from me is that you can be the light in this world, that you do have the potential to become the light while having fun. Never
Nice.
forget.
Great words to live by. Now, before I let you go, I got five rapid fire questions for you. For
Ooh,
fun, give me the first thing that comes to mind. You're stranded on a deserted island, one food to eat for the rest of your life, zero consequence. So you're still gonna be in shape, you're still gonna be healthy, whatever food it is. What's that one food?
raw fish.
Good choice. Hollywood calls and goes, "Hey, Saki, we love your story. We would love to do a biopic of you. Who would you cast to play you?"
Oh, I don't even know. I don't even know. I don't even know.
Okay, so up and coming actor comes up and goes, "Hey, I got casted to play this part of you. I would love to get to know you a little bit more, and let's bond. Let's hang out." And you go, "Hey, I got the whole night prepared. This is what a great night with Saki looks like." So what does it look like?
Oh, we'll go for a dinner for sure, like really good restaurant. Not necessarily fancy, but like really good food and really good service. And then we'll probably go for a walk just to get to know each other even more. And then at the end, we're gonna end it with the blast karaoke night.
Well, we all know karaoke lasts hours, and most likely it's going on to the next day. And
Yeah.
we go, "Oh, man, we should probably call it a day or a night or whatever it is, whatever time it is now. But man, I'm hungry." And you go, "Hey, no worry, come back to my place. I'm gonna fix you my special dish." What's that special dish that you could prepare?
Ooh, I would say a bowl of rice with like a beef stew, like Japanese style beef stew or chicken stew thing that we can just put on bowl of rice and we can just eat that without any guilt.
Nicely done. Last question, but before I get there, give me a number from one to four.
3.
One, two, three. So the word is dragons.
Ooh.
Okay, so if you had to use dragons as a metaphor for success, how is success like dragons?
A lot of people think that slaying the dragon is your way to becoming a hero. Well, I can guarantee you that the real way for you to become successful and to become your own hero is not to slay the dragon, but make dragon your friend. Your dragon are not your enemies. Dragons are your friends who will bring you from point A to not point just B, but to point C and to where you want to be on top of that hill, baby.
I see that. So that's how success is like dragons, and that is a topic table topics first place winner right there. Nicely done. Any final words from you, and also what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, well, before I finish, I wanted to take this opportunity to learn from you as well because you're also a coach in the same field. And what would you give as an advice? If there's one advice that you can give to anyone who wants to become a speaker or who wants to become a better speaker, what would you give to them?
I would say yes. At any
Mm,
point in time, if you have any opportunity to go in front of people to speak, say yes. Create those opportunities. I've worked with a lot of people in the corporate realm who are engineers, and they go, "How do I stick out? How do I get noticed?" I'm like, "Hey, you can express the what do you call it? The interest of creating lunch and learns, and you be the person who hosts it." Or you can volunteer to do the safety topics. You can volunteer to say a presentation or whatever. Say yes to those opportunities, because if you don't ever say yes to any of that stuff, you're never even going to have the chance to decide on doing it or going up in front of people and getting that experience and actually practicing that craft. And it's repetition, right? We all know that speaking is something that we have to do constantly and persistently. And if we don't do that, you can't improve.
It's so crazy that you say that because I was so guilty of that. Last night I went to this club, Toastmasters club. I was invited as a guest to evaluate someone, and it was a executive MBA Toastmasters. So only the people who went through that program can go in. But for through connections and everything, I was invited as a guest to evaluate something. I go there and they tell me, well, the speaker, she canceled last minute, she couldn't be here. Are you practicing your contest speech? Do you want to deliver it tonight? And then I said, well, I came up with the title and the conclusion yesterday. I don't think I'm ready. I don't think I want to do it. So instead of, you said seek for yes, and I was saying no, 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 until this one lady there, and she's a really good friend of mine. I've seen her, and she was like, Saki, you can do it. Just don't, we're like family, Just give it a shot, take it easy, just do it. And I was like, yeah, like, why am I saying no to this? And then when I told that to my coach, he's like, he gave me a tap on my hand saying, yeah, you're supposed to say yes to everything. Whenever you have an opportunity, say yes. And it's just so crazy that you told me the same advice. Thank you so much, Fong. It's amazing reminder.
Awesome. I'm pretty sure you have tons of stories. They don't know that this is your next speech. Just pick another one that you did before.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Once again, what's the best way for people to get in touch?
Yeah, so people can reach me by Facebook. They can add me Saki Kajita. Uh, on Instagram is Saki_speaks, Saki speaks, and where else? My website is sakikajita.com. So anywhere on those platforms, they can reach out to me. They can say hi. We can have a chit chat. I would love to get to know their story. It's one of my passion is to know other people and see what they've been through. And if there's anything I can do to add value to their life, that would be a big win for me.
Awesome. So make sure everybody out there get connected with Saki, whether it's to say hi, maybe I'm sure she'll say yes to karaoke as well. So get in touch with her. And like I said, she has lots of great content. She's an amazing speaker, and I can't wait for that presentation to come out that you did recently and for everybody to see and experience because it was one of the best ones I saw out there. So congratulations on everything that you've succeeded on, and all the best to everything else. Again, make sure everybody connect with Saki. She's Saki. My name is Fong. Until next time, today is the day to lock your peak potential. We'll see you later.
Thank you.